Hello and welcome to an update on my debt confession. We are a family of 3. My husband and I are in our mid-30s and we have a 1.5-year-old daughter. My husband and I both work full-time and we each make 6 figures, but we still manage to accumulate quite a bit of debt, and we'll take a look at just how much that is. At the beginning of the year, I set out a goal to pay about $90,000 towards our debt. So let's see if we've made any progress. This is my debt payoff spreadsheet that I've been using this year and a little bit last year to help track our debt payments. I'm going to go over what we've paid so far this year, and we'll talk about if it's doable for us to pay off the rest of the debts that we had planned to. Now, as you can see, we started the year off with $521,040.15 worth of debt. Our debt is our mortgage, which is the largest chunk at almost $438,000. We bought our house in August of 2021, and it was probably too big of a house for us at the time, and it still is. But we wanted a little bit of land, and it was hard to find a house that had more than like a half acre or something, and we wanted to be able to have a little bit of a garden. So the house that we bought has almost 3 acres, and a lot of it is wooded, but there's still room for a garden, and we're a little bit secluded from our neighbors because we do have the trees and the little bit extra land, and that's exactly what I wanted in a house. I'm going to skip over our truck loan for a second because my retirement account loan is kind of important to the house because I took that out as part of the down payment. I took out a $50,000 loan back in August of 2021 to use as the down payment on the house. I put about 15% down on the house, and so that $50,000 was just a portion of it. The rest was cash, but most of my cash that I had went towards closing costs because those were pretty expensive. We did secure a nice interest rate on both the house and the retirement account loan because this was back in 2021 when the interest rates were so low. Our mortgage interest rate is 2.875, I think. I have 2.88 recorded here because it rounds up. And then my retirement account loan has a 4.25% interest rate, and all of the interest on the retirement account loan gets paid back to myself, so I'm not paying anyone else any interest on that. However, I am losing out on some time in the market and all of the gains that we've had in the couple of years since 2021, even though it's taken a dip kind of recently, so I haven't lost out too much there. But also, something that I learned after I had taken out this loan is that I'm kind of being taxed on it twice, because even though some of my loan was taken out from a Roth retirement account, so it was put in after tax, a lot of my loan was from my traditional retirement account, which means I'm paying it back with after-tax money, and then when I go to withdraw this money in retirement, I'm paying taxes on it again. So I'm kind of getting double taxed on my retirement right now because I took out this loan. So let's go back to the truck loan. At the beginning of the year, we owed $13,630 on my husband's truck. We had bought him a Ford Maverick Hybrid in August of 2023, which was right before we had our daughter, and also right at the exact same time that his student loans came due. So we took on lots of debt payments all at once because we bought this truck. It was kind of a rush decision to buy the truck when we did. He had placed an order for one, but they were backlogged for over a year. So he had placed the order for his truck, and then a dealership called and said that they had one available that was almost exactly what he had placed the order for. And so we went ahead and bought it, even though we weren't quite ready to do that. We had a little bit to put down on the truck, and also he traded in his old car, which wasn't worth very much. So our truck loan was, I think, about $26,000, and we took on a 3-year loan with a 5.69% interest rate that we were paying every other week. So we didn't have monthly payments, we had bi-weekly or fortnightly payments on this truck. Those truck payments were pretty hefty because we were paying them pretty frequently, but we didn't want to pay a ton of interest, so we took on a shorter loan with more frequent payments so that we wouldn't be paying quite so much in interest. And then we decided that this was going to be the first debt that we tackled because it was the highest interest rate debt. Next, we have my husband's student loans. As I said, we started paying these back in around September, October of 2023. They had been on deferment because of the COVID stuff. And I think originally he had taken out around $38,000. And at the beginning of this year, they were at just under $34,000. We are just making the minimum payments on these every single month because the interest rate on these is also pretty low. He has about 9 loans, and the interest rates span from 2.5% up to 4.28%. So they're all pretty low, but it's still a pretty big monthly payment that we pay towards his student loans. So altogether, at the beginning of the year, we had just over $521,000 in debts, and we actually began paying off some of these a little bit early. We paid our mortgage, which we're not planning on paying off early. At the beginning of the year, that was $2,675. And some of that was escrow, which holds our property taxes and insurance, but about $900 is towards principal and about $1,000 is towards interest. Then we began paying off our truck a little bit early. We put some extra payments towards our truck, a little bit over $3,000 towards the truck at the beginning of the year in January, and we ended up paying off over $3,800 in January. For my retirement, I pay this with every paycheck. I don't think I mentioned that. So every 2 weeks I make a payment for this one as well. And that I'm just paying the minimum right now. And then student loans, also the minimum of $382 every single month. So that left us in February with our mortgage down just a tiny bit to about $900 short. But our truck loan went down a lot more. It was then just under $10,000, which was a huge milestone for us. My retirement barely budged either, and then student loans, same, because we are just paying the minimums on those. We had brought our debt down by about $5,000 between January and February, mostly because of that extra payment towards the truck. And then we continued in February with just making the minimum on the mortgage. And then we only paid a tiny bit extra towards the truck. I think it was just about $300 extra towards the truck because other things came up that we needed to pay for. And it actually wasn't additional expenses, it was additional savings opportunities. We realized that as we were doing our taxes that we hadn't actually maxed out my husband's HSA, which he has access to. And so in February, we decided to max out the previous year's HSA so that we could get a little bit of a refund on our taxes. And then we also decided that we would max out the current year HSA, at least up to what his employer wasn't going to contribute to it. So in February, we were working towards maxing out the HSAs, and also we were working towards maxing out my husband's Roth IRA. Originally, we had planned to contribute to it evenly throughout the year, but I think the markets took a bit of a dip, and we really wanted to take advantage of that and just max out my husband's Roth IRA instead of contributing towards debt that month. So we only paid a little bit extra in February towards our truck loan so that we could focus on those other savings goals. And then for my retirement account loan and the student loans, we just paid the minimums. So we started out March with our debts just decreased a little bit because of the minimum payments. Overall, our debt only decreased about $2,000, and that was, again, just the minimum payments and a tiny bit extra towards our truck. But in March, we actually got the private mortgage insurance removed from our mortgage, and so our mortgage payment went down. As I said, we only put 15% down on the house, and if you don't put 20% down or more, then you have to pay private mortgage insurance, at least with a conventional loan. So we were able to call our mortgage company and assess our loan to value ratio in order to get our private mortgage insurance removed. We had just gotten a tax bill for our house, and they had increased the value of our house for our taxes, for our tax assessment. And so I was hoping to use that increased value appraisal as kind of a way to get PMI removed, but they didn't need any documentation that our house had appreciated, because we had actually hit that loan to value ratio just by making our minimum payments. So that was about 3 years early, I think. Typically, private mortgage insurance stays on your loan for 5 years, sometimes 6 years. But we called and got it removed early, which was really nice, because now our mortgage payment is just a little bit less. And then in March, we also continued with not making extra payments towards our truck loan. There happened to be 5 Mondays in March, and Mondays was the day that we paid our truck loan. And so we ended up making 3 payments in March towards our truck, just the minimum payments. So that's why we ended up paying $933 towards our truck, even though we didn't make any extra payments. We were also continuing to focus on contributing to the HSA and the Roth IRA during March as well. And then for my other 2 loans, we just paid the minimums. So we started out in April with our debts down just a tiny bit again because of just paying the minimums. It looks like our debt only decreased by about $2,500 just paying the minimums. We paid our mortgage payment as expected in April, and then we began extra payments towards our truck again. Yay! In April, we were able to put a huge chunk towards our truck since we had finished contributing to the HSAs and the Roth IRAs. We were able to put, I think, almost $6,000 towards the truck, but we weren't able to pay it off yet because we had started at over $8,000. And then April was a 3 paycheck month for me, which was why we were able to contribute so much extra towards the truck. But I also paid my retirement account loan 3 times. And then we just paid the minimum on our student loans, which means we started out May with only owing $942 on our truck, and everything else was just about the same. We're getting really close to $500,000 of debt at this point, so we've already almost paid off $20,000, which is really exciting. That in May we were getting really close to under that $500,000. We just paid our mortgage like normal, and then we paid off the truck. So the amount owed in May, that was just kind of an estimate of how much we would owe by the end of May. Because we paid it off a little bit earlier in May, we didn't have to pay quite as much interest. So we paid 1 minimum payment, and then we immediately paid it off. So in total, we paid $917.96 towards the truck to completely pay it off in May. So that was really exciting that we eliminated one of our debts, which was part of our goal at the beginning of the year, to pay off the truck and then move on to my retirement account loan. But as you'll see, we haven't moved on to my retirement account loan yet because we just paid the minimum on that in May, even though we had a little bit extra because May was my husband's 3 paycheck month. And so we did have quite a bit extra that we could have contributed to my retirement account loan, like was our original plan, but we didn't do that, and we just kept it in savings, and we just paid the minimums on the student loans. So we started out in June with no truck loan. Our mortgage went down just a little bit. My retirement account loan went down just a little bit, and student loans also just a little bit. But we finally got below that $500,000 in debt, which was a really exciting milestone for us, because I'm always saying that we have over $500,000 in debt, and now we have just under $500,000, which is pretty exciting. So hopefully we won't take on any more debt if anything else comes up. We have a pretty big emergency fund, hopefully to cover it. Although the last debt that we had to take on was for our roof, which was over $44,000, and we don't have quite that much saved up. So hopefully there's no big expense like that that causes us to take on more debt. Although if we can get a 0 interest loan again, that's what we would do if we had something catastrophic happen. But currently we don't have any plans to take on any more debt. Hopefully we won't take on anything else new. I'm not planning on getting a car. My husband doesn't need a car because he has his truck now fully paid off. My car is a 2018 Prius Prime, and it only has like 62,000 miles on it, so it's in really good condition, even though I've been rear-ended 3 or 4 times now, which is pretty insane. I don't know why I always get rear-ended, but in my state, it's never my fault for getting rear-ended, so I never have to pay for it to get fixed. I just don't like the hassle of it. So hopefully we won't be replacing our cars anytime soon. We've done all of the major things for the house, I think, with the roof and the HVAC. Hopefully nothing else comes up. We do have some pool maintenance to do, and then there are some things that we would like to do around the house. For example, we are talking with a contractor about getting our bathroom remodeled. That might happen this summer, which is kind of why we put a bit of a pause on paying back the retirement account loan, because we may want to save up for the remodel of the bathroom. We were considering getting our decks resurfaced at the same time, but they kind of need replaced, and it's going to be a bit expensive to do that as well. They're not like a hazard, so they don't absolutely need to be replaced, but it wouldn't be worth resurfacing them with the state that they're in. It would make more sense to replace them in a couple of years than to resurface them and still need to replace them in a couple of years. But in June, we already paid our mortgage and my husband's student loans, but no other of our debts have come out. That puts our mortgage down just a little bit by about $900, and my husband's student loans down by about $300. So the plan was to pay off my retirement account loan this year. That would be another almost $34,000 contributed towards that through the end of the year. I think the plan was to pay it off by October, which is still very possible. Right now we are just saving up the money that we would be paying towards the retirement account loan, just to make sure that we have cash on hand in case we want to remodel. But also in July, my husband's paycheck is changing because his company was bought by a larger company, and they're finally completely merging into that larger company, and that company has different benefits than his current company. And so the way that his company was structured before, the small company, they covered all of the healthcare premiums and contributed to his HSA every year. But they only offered a 3% retirement account match. At the new company that bought him, they don't pay the premiums. So he's going to have a pretty hefty chunk of his paycheck going towards healthcare premiums, even though we're still getting the high deductible plan, and he's not going to get a contribution towards his HSA anymore. But they offer an 8% match to his retirement. So his paycheck is going to decrease significantly because he's going to be paying health insurance premiums, and he's going to be contributing more to his retirement. So our take-home pay is going to decrease starting in July, and with the shift, they pay on a different pay week, so he's also only getting one paycheck in July, and we just don't know how much that's going to be. So we would like to keep a little bit of a cash buffer for that reason and not pay off a crazy amount of debt in the coming months and then have nothing left in case we can't cover our monthly expenses due to his decreased pay. But so far this year, we have been able to pay off $21,000 worth of debt so far, and we're only halfway through the year, which is really exciting, while we still were also able to contribute to a bunch of our savings goals. And so that made a dent of 4.1% based off of what we started at this year. But since last year, when we started actually tracking this, we have paid off over $47,000, almost $48,000 of debt, which is 8.8% of our total debt. So we've actually made a lot more progress this year since we actually began focusing on it. Last year we were just paying our minimums for all of our debts because we We're actually saving up for the roof, which I had talked about. So we had saved up that $44,000 over the course of last year in order to pay off that zero interest loan before the interest came due. But this year, since we don't have anything like that, we've been able to really focus on paying down debt and also doing a little bit more towards our retirement. The last year, we didn't plan on maxing out my husband's Roth IRA, but we were able to do that late last year and at the beginning of this year once we had saved up the entirety of the roof loan amount. So then we felt comfortable contributing to his retirement again. And then this year, we still made it a priority to contribute to our savings while we're also focusing pretty heavily on debt payment. We have really been trying to keep our expenses low, which is a little bit difficult considering we have a toddler daughter. But it's really important for us to get out of debt, get our monthly expenses down, and continue to save for retirement so that we can become work optional in the near future, especially while our daughter is still young. I would really love to be a stay-at-home mom for her. If you're interested in seeing more of our family's journey as we work towards getting out of debt, then I would love to have you subscribe and follow along. And let me know if you're also on a debt-free journey, because I would love to cheer you on as well. Thank you for being here.